story is somewhat unique and calls for a different kind of introduction.
Who's gone? Today we are canceling the apocalypse!
Wait a minute. You ain't heard nothing yet.
And this is?
Lilu Dallas Multipass.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Houston, we have a problem.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Now, where was I?
Welcome to episode 133 of the BlokeBusters podcast. I'm Paul, and today we're going to be talking about The Matrix Resurrections. And for this time out, I figured, why the hell not grab someone who'd never been on the podcast before? Because, you know, I just do that from time to time. And I decided to grab a guy by the name of Jesse from the Sudden But Inevitable podcast. How are you doing, my good sir?
I am doing wonderfully, Paul. Thank you so much for having me. I gotta say right away, I have listened to BlokeBusters before, so I am not just a podcaster. I'm also a podcast listener.
Yes, not so long time listener, first time caller. But yes, happy to have you on. And of course, if anyone does wish to get a hold of me in particular about anything that we do talk about in this or anything else, you can go to Twitter, Instagram or Facebook at BlokeBusters. You can go to BlokeBusters.com, look at the website there, lovely. You can go to allportsopen.com and check out our network page. It's very nice there, a lovely group of guys and gals. You can email us, theblokes@blokebusters.com, or you can just yell really loudly at whatever you're listening to the podcast on, and potentially we'll hear you. I don't know. Give it a go. You never know. But yes, usually at this point we would dive straight into the film. However, I realize that I have never really gone into any details about my initial watching of the Matrix trilogy or anything like that. So I figured, so that we can actually give a proper review of this film, we should probably talk about what our, not everything, because that will take us way too long, but just a general overview of our thoughts on the original trilogy. So where did you stand on the initial trilogy before you watched this film?
Well, I think that I am in that camp that is slightly more forgiving of the two sequels than most. This movie, the original movie, came out when I was 11, and I think I saw it when I was 12. I know it wasn't right away. I saw it on DVD, not in the theater. But my dad was a big, video and audio nerd, so he was like, this is digital video disc. This is what that means. It's the coolest movie we could have on it. You have to let me show this to our son, and he did, and I loved it. And so when the sequels were announced, I was over the moon. I was like, okay, yes, give me more of the Matrix. I want more of that. It was the first time that I had ever seen those kind of visuals in live action. I had seen anime, as a young child, but I didn't really draw the connection between the two things as a kid. Right. And I just thought, okay, I'm seeing the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life visually. And, on top of that, it's got this cerebral layer that I can talk with my friends about. And so when the sequels are coming out, I think I was just the right age to eat them up, sort of regardless of their content. And that's not me saying I think that their content is not good. That's me saying that even if they were bad movies, I don't know that I would have not enjoyed them, but I did have a good time with them. There's probably some things that they failed at as far as what objectively quote unquote makes a great movie. But for me, I had a ton of fun watching those two movies in the theater. And I believe it was the same year that they came out. It was the first one came out in May and the second one was in November or something like that.
They were back to back. I don't remember the exact dates though.
But it was that was one of the first instances of that, where you had two installments really quickly in the same franchise of that caliber. And I remember just loving it. And I think for me, I think a big part of it was, like I said, not only those visuals, seeing those kind of visuals for the first time, but also being presented with that idea of the simulated reality. And, maybe reality isn't what we think. I think that might have been my first movie that asked that question, because again, I think I was 12 when I saw it.
Right. Yeah, I do recall seeing it in the cinema. I believe I did. I know for a fact I saw the second and the third one in the cinema, but the first one I can't be absolutely sure on. And I actually did a presentation when I was at university which featured The Matrix, because The Matrix is the film that actually drove the popularity of DVDs. It is because of The Matrix and how popular it was and how much more you could get on the DVD and all of the special features that came with it. That was what pushed DVD to become the major format. So it's, 'cause I believe it was Laserdisc was the other one at the time, and DVD won out because The Matrix exclusively was on DVD. So, yeah, and I remember having the 10 DVD set Ultimate Collector's Edition, which no longer, A, I don't have, and B, is no longer the Ultimate Collector's Edition because there is now a fourth film. But yes, I thoroughly enjoyed watching the second and third films. I was not really understanding where the hate was coming from.
Yeah.
I saw them as a continuation, but also a departure from the original, because the original is, understandably, you could have it be a standalone film and just be by itself and everything would be fine. But they wanted to continue in the story and they wanted to tell more, and they didn't want to just repeat what happened in the first one because, that's boring. So, yeah, and the MCU didn't exist yet, so there wasn't a way to do that and actually be overly good, unless you're James Cameron. So, basically, yeah, I really enjoyed the second and third one. I didn't think they were as good as the first one. I will freely admit that, but I didn't think they were as terrible as everyone said. My favorite thing as well, if you're I know a lot of people have issues with the CG and how it aged, and especially during the Burly Brawl in the second one, where it is kind of rubbery, as you watch it. It's not very well defined, which, given the technology at the time, it definitely did the best it could. My favorite sort of hand-waving explanation for that is that what we're seeing is the Matrix attempting to render it, but it can't because there's too much. And
that's not that hand-wavy. I mean, that happens in the first movie, right? When the helicopter hits the building, you see that wave go out in the glass before the glass shatters in the same pattern. And I think that's accurate, Paul. I think that's the Matrix attempting to render something that breaks its rules.
Yeah, and obviously Smith is a virus at this point. He is the thing that he explicitly stated that humans were. So, he's doing something that is completely breaking the code of the Matrix, so it's understandable that it's unable to render it. Now, obviously, that is something that you can also just be like, yeah, but the CG, at the time, the CG was not capable of doing photorealistic of that scale.
Right.
With that, they would have had to have rendered that fight for a solid 2 years with the technology they had at the time to make it even close to what you can get now. So, yeah, I'm always willing to give that a pass because I appreciated what they were trying to do. And either side of it, they had actual people there as doubles for Smith, and they did it very well. And then it's just the actual fight that got very rubbery. So yeah, I'm fine with that. But yeah, I will admit that when I heard they were doing this one being The Matrix Resurrections, I was a little apprehensive. I heard that it was happening. I heard that Lana was doing it, but Lily wasn't. And so I was like, okay, is there a reason for that? Like, what did Lily just put her foot down and say, absolutely not, I'm not touching this with a barge pole? Like, what happened? It wasn't until recently that I kind of looked into it, and it seems that Lily basically was just like, you know what, I'm fine not coming back to this. And she was also busy doing something else at the time, so she actually couldn't direct it. And Lana apparently just kind of had the idea for this after losing her parents and a friend in 2019. So like this kind of came to her, and I can see this as being I'm bringing back the characters that I know, and delving back into that. So.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I think that
No, go ahead.
I think that definitely goes to so much about the movie itself. You know, the one director with a vision for this story, the reasoning that is presented on screen in the story is just. I fully agree, though. Like when I first heard about this, I went, okay, I'm nervous and I can't figure out why. So I thought about it some, and I think it goes back to what we did love, or what I know I loved about the original series, which was that was the first time, as I said, that I saw that kind of visuals in live action, and that was the first time I was presented with those kinds of ideas in a stylishly cool way, right? And so my immediate question is, what is the new idea they're going to present me with, and what is the cool new looking thing that they're going to show me? Now, almost immediately in this movie, the movie goes, we know that's what you want. And I mean, the tone of this movie is something that I don't know if I didn't expect it, but it caught me off guard. I will say that this movie caught me off guard. I will start from there.
Yes, that's a good place to start. Just so I can make sure I get the nuts and bolts out of the way as well, directed by Lana Wachowski. This had a budget of $190 million, and as of now, so I'm going to date this podcast. This episode is being recorded the night of the 30th of December. It will be out, at least a month after that. But that is when we have recorded this, and it has currently made $70 million worldwide. So in the box office, probably not going to make that back. And of course, most people will take the budget and then double it if you also add in marketing and so on. So I do think that it's going to be some time before they break even. If they do, they may not. And it's interesting as well. I don't know how you saw the film. I saw it on HBO Max, and it turns out that it's only on HBO Max for 30 days, and then it's going to be gone.
Well,
so
I, first of all, same boat. I watched this on HBO Max. I have what I consider to be a high-risk household, so I'm just not at a theater mindset right now.
Right.
But I did watch a couple of movies this year on HBO Max where I was like, I would love to see this in the theater. But I was deeply grateful for the opportunity to not have to see them in the theater. Now, that having been said, most of those movies that are like streaming for 30 days and then gone have since come back. It just took a couple of months. So like Godzilla vs. Kong is on there now, and Dune was back, and I'm not sure about Dune yet, but I know Mortal Kombat is back. Like I know a lot of the movies that were on and then gone are back. So maybe that's a positive thing to look forward to. And like you were saying, they may need to squeeze whatever they can out of this movie. I would not be surprised if we get a physical release of this movie like next month or the month after. Like I'm talking January or February, so contemporaneous to when this episode is being released. But I just, I am interested to see, without spoiling anything about my feelings or the movie itself. I'm really interested to see if Warner Brothers wants a Matrix 5 after this.
I will say that based on what I have read so far, it seems as though Warner Brothers has effectively said, okay, we're done when it comes to film entries in the franchise.
So if I could ask you a question directly, Paul.
Sure.
Do you think that's what Lana wanted? I don't mean to ask this in a way that implies that I'm like, because this movie was bad, because I don't believe that it was. I think this movie may have only been for Lana, like, which I'm fine with. I'm totally fine with that. But do you think that she went into this thinking, I'm going to end this now on my own terms?
Yeah, I do think that, because as I said, based on what I was looking at, Lana really wanted to get back into this world to be with Neo and Trinity again, as a direct result of dealing with the grief of losing her parents and her friend. And this feels like it is a cathartic film, if that's what you're looking for. And it definitely is. It's very odd to talk about because there's a bit of a duality where it's like it's a return, but it's not. I feel that this entire film was, we've come back, but that's it. Like I can see how they would technically be able to make more, because obviously they made more after the original Matrix and they were able to follow through with it. However, if you were to make more after this one, and we'll get into the spoilery talk in just a minute so that we don't have to keep dodging around it. But yeah, if you get into a sequel after this one, it will literally be the thing that this film takes the piss out of in the opening 30 minutes.
But I think it's maybe fitting that as you mentioned, there is a duality about it being a return and not, because the whole movie really feels to be about duality and, combined with a non-binary nature. Like you have to accept two halves of a thing in order to live fully as the one piece of it, is what I feel like I was pulling from the movie, part of the message that I was pulling from it. So I think your perception of that duality right up front is spot on.
Yeah. I found it really interesting because at this point, just in case it's not obvious, in case you haven't listened to any of the other episodes of BlokeBusters, from here on in, spoilers. We will talk about the entire film, not even in order. We're just going to talk about the film. So this film is a film of two halves. Absolutely. Now, the first half isn't even the first half; it's the first act. But the first part is okay. We're back in the Matrix. We know, and we're going to make sure you understand that we know. And I think it was probably my favorite bit in it is the fact that they do not shy away from just flat out calling out Warner Brothers. In just a totally ballsy bit of dialogue. They have Smith, who is Neo's boss in this resurfaced Matrix, just say the line, basically our business boss Warner Brothers has said they will make a sequel to the Matrix with or without you. And it's like, okay, all right. I wonder if that was a conversation that happened in real time.
It has to have been. I mean, that has to be, because to me, that's the only reason to set the whole thing up in such a, pardon my use of the term, but in such a meta way, right? Like, why else put that scene in there, and why else have him working essentially the same job, but in a different industry as the original films, right? Because there's, and they do get into it because they do have to explain to us, the viewer, like, okay, how did they get him back in? Because the thing about him is that he doesn't need to be there. But I feel like that context has to be, it has to be the basis for like most of the movie, right? Like for the impetus for the movie being made, because it feels like Warner Brothers wouldn't allow that through unless it were true, right?
Right. Yeah, it's like, I mean, unless Warner Brothers has a self-aware bone, and it was just like, yeah, sure, like, what the hell, why not? Put it in there. Like, yeah, either they are the most game company that I've heard of, like, in that regard, or it genuinely happened and they just didn't want to fight that fight because they wanted the film to be made by one of the original directors. So, either way, it's quite interesting. And one thing I did find kind of fun is they really did dive straight into it, because I believe that the company that he's at, like Metacortex, that is the same company from the original film. Yep. He's just now he's a video game designer for the company rather than just being a programmer at a software company. So it is kind of fun to see. Like, I'll be perfectly honest, like, regardless of everything, the second I saw Keanu on screen as Neo again, well, as Thomas Anderson again, it was really just like a wave of nostalgia there. Yeah. Like, it's clearly, obviously he looks older because he's older. And I can absolutely buy that he was only supposed to be, let's say, 20 years older in this one.
I think that's actually a really cool little point, is that they went, in the real world, it's actually been closer to 60 years. But, for us in the real world, it's only been 20 years. But if you ask people, it might feel like it's been 60 years, since The Matrix came out. The last couple of years have felt like 5 or 6 years, just in themselves, I think. So it's a nice extra meta level of, commentary on time there, and how time can feel different depending on your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And that actually is one thing I kind of wanted to talk with you about. So, and obviously just towards the end of the film, as we find out that they have been genuinely resurrected. They were revived from death and rebooted and, I guess, recreated to some extent, like, augmented. Like, we see something happening, but we don't know what. It's
they were
kind
tinkered with.
Yeah, it felt very Dead Space-esque, actually. Don't know if you have played or have seen people playing those games, but like that kind of visuals felt very much like that. And so it's like, okay, they have only really aged 20 years when it's been 60 years. But it's like, how did you feel about the entire thing, of the fact that they were literally resurrected from death? Like, this is something that I have seen being the biggest sticking point with people watching it, is that, The Matrix, regardless of everything that happens inside the Matrix, everything outside of the Matrix is, like, very gritty, very, like, following what we would understand is happening during this time. Like,
I would say that the groundwork is laid for that in the original sequels, right? So in Reloaded, Neo finds out this is not the first version of this. This is not the first time we have done the whole Matrix thing. You guys are super susceptible to it. So as soon as we're done here, we'll start it over. Everything will be hunky-dory. Well, machine hunky-dory. So that groundwork was laid, and then the architect actually says to him, we'll reinsert your source code, and then there'll be another the one, and it will go on in cycles forever. So when those sequels came out, I remember there was a lot of, there's a Matrix within a Matrix theories and things like that, especially because The Matrix Reloaded ends with Neo able to feel the machines in the real world. So I would also posit that there has been some sci-fi sort of future magic janky stuff happening in the quote-unquote real world of the Matrix as well already. So I don't think that they really broke any of their rules. And I mean, Neo was splayed out in a cross shape and then dragged in a cross shape across the Machine City. So were we not expecting a resurrection for a character whose end was that? I feel like the sequels definitely set us up for more sequels, but they sort of went, you know what, it's going to be a while, which it was, to their credit. But I feel like everything that's in this movie, Resurrections, was set up in the prior three movies, but mostly set up in the prior two sequels.
Yeah.
Now, I do agree that it was a little Dead Spacey when they were being reconstructed. But to me, that was the part of the original Matrix that probably inspired Dead Space, right? Was all of the body horror stuff, the bug in his stomach, and getting out of the pods, which they knew they needed to one up, right? Because they're like, well, we've seen people in pods before, so what do we do now? Well, what if we just put bodies in there and cut the top of their heads off and mess with their brains? Like, oh, okay, that's pretty extreme.
Yeah, that'll do it. It's they sat down and watched Event Horizon, and they were like, okay, we're not going this far, but we're gonna get close.
Yeah, just pull that lever back one notch from Event Horizon, and then we'll change the lighting to Blade Runner, and it'll be fine.
Yes, and go with the quick edits from Mass Effect when you get the Protean beacon flashes, and there we go, perfect. It was interesting because I was kind of expecting there to be a quite literal Deus Ex Machina moment where it's like, okay, here's how he's back. Like, there was a backup of Neo's brain when he went in, that was saved somewhere, and then it was like that was then put onto a different body. And then I was kind of expecting, because obviously in the Matrix, when you go into it, you see yourself however you see yourself, that's who you are in the Matrix. Right. So I was expecting them to resurrect something that was going to happen in the original Matrix but didn't, where Neo was going to be visible in the Matrix, but it's going to be someone else's body, like when it's in real life. And they didn't do that, which I thought was odd, because that felt to me like the logical step, but obviously they wanted to literally resurrect him.
I don't know. There's also something, I don't know if I would call this a nitpick, but there's something about, like, you started building an AI-powered, like, mini Matrix module inside the Matrix, and the machines that were in charge of you weren't like, okay, that needs to stop. Like, that's a little... But I gotta agree with that. I was sort of like, okay, there's gonna either be I'll say like 8 minutes into the movie, I was like, oh, I know who the one is now. I thought it was gonna be one of the new characters through all the marketing. I was like, oh, they're really setting me up to like think it's all about Neo and Trinity again, but it's actually gonna be one of these new characters, and they're gonna be the one. And then like 8 minutes into the movie, I went, oh, nope, Trinity will be the one at the end of this movie, which I'm okay with. Usually when I can do that, I get upset, but I don't know. There was something about it where it was like, that makes good sense to me. I'm okay with that, I think.
Yeah, there were several moments in the original where it felt like they were kind of saying that Trinity and Neo were two halves of one whole, and obviously Neo just has the one powers in this Matrix. So to me, when we were getting to the end, and it was like, okay, so he has some power, but he is a totally nerfed version of himself. Which actually, I think my favorite single moment in the entire film is when he's like, all right, I'll try and fly, and then he can't. He just says, yeah, that's not happening. But he
remembers how.
Yeah, he remembers how he should do it, and then he does it, and you see the little ripple in the ground, and then all he does is he just jumps up in the air and just goes, nope. Like, you even got the music sting from when he did it in the original was coming in, and then just total cut-off. So, yeah, no, I love that they were just like, this isn't the Matrix, this is the next Matrix. So,
Yeah.
like, of course he doesn't have full access to everything he used to be able to do.
Well, and
then,
if the whole point was to build a module to contain the One, why would they not nerf him, right? Like, that's the point of the Matrix, is that there are rules that can be bent and things like that. So if they know his abilities, then in theory they should be able to build the Matrix to constrain those, or appear to constrain those abilities, which I did appreciate. I gotta ask, how did you like Neil Patrick Harris's character?
I was 50-50 on that character. Number one, I really like Neil Patrick Harris.
Yeah.
So, yeah, to steal from the Cinema Sins / Cinema Wins thing, Neil Patrick Harris is always a win. But I also appreciated that he was the new Matrix guy. Like, yeah, in the original we had the architect, who was very stuffy and very long-winded, and was just very, very sure of himself. And this was, by his own admission, like, just an analyst who was there and decided he wanted to do it. So, you know, he's obviously fairly sure of himself, but there is that level of to everything he does, because he's like, yeah, I'm the greatest. Just don't look over there. Don't get too close to this thing. So yeah, it was very interesting. But the one issue I had with his character that kind of kept me just a little bit further back, not quite fully embracing it, is the fact that he pretty much went straight into exposition mode, and it seemed to be entirely for the story. Like, he took absolutely no hesitation whatsoever in explaining everything to Neo as soon as he walked into the garage. And it was like that, like, from the stance of the general public going to see this film, like, okay, thanks, I guess. However, I can't imagine anyone went to see this film who hadn't seen the previous film, so they should be aware that there doesn't need to be a huge amount of hand-holding in these films, because there wasn't previously. There was a lot of talking about a lot of different things, but very, very rarely was there just, here is, for the next 5 minutes, here is literally every single piece of backstory you need to this Matrix.
But they did do that at the end of the Matrix Reloaded. So the machines, and it is sort of like it was the answer to the end of the war originally for the machines, was to put all their cards on the table with Neo and go, all right, what do you got? Here's what we got. Because we can't answer the Smith problem. So we need human input here. What do you think we should do? So you could argue that it's already been demonstrated to the machines that they can, maybe humans are the only enemies they can negotiate with, like reliably, or say, hey, if we show them, quote unquote, some goodwill here, then they'll be willing to negotiate. But I agree that especially for a movie of this length, there were quite a few number of scenes that were like, here's how things work. Now, we might have needed that if we had never seen this before, like you said, if we hadn't been to the world of the Matrix. And it sort of indicates to me, based on the numbers, that only people that really liked the Matrix saw this movie at all. So I think you're probably right there, Paul.
It's something that I feel, if it had done something, like, because, that scene in the garage where he is literally laying absolutely everything out. He's talking about how, hey, I used your bullet time against you, which again was another bit of a meta name nod, because obviously nobody in the entire trilogy refers to what Neo can do as bullet time.
Right.
That was the name of the process that was used to film those moments. So, again, just another little see. But yeah, like that entire scene where he is just being like, okay, so here's how agents work in this one. Here's exactly what I'm doing to keep you in place. Like, you now can't move as fast as I can. I was anticipating that by the end of the film, you would have seen Neo actually being able to speed up. Like, you'd see him just getting a little quicker and a little quicker as it was going on. And then at the end, he just sort of broke through that. Now, obviously, at the end, they had Smith do that. And they even have a line of dialogue where he says, like, Tom and I are very similar. And there's so I think that they were trying to say that Neo probably could have done it and would have been able to do it in the original Matrix, but this is a new one. Although that is my biggest question from this film is, where the hell does Smith come from?
Yeah, so as a my question was going to be, why? Wow, that is a good question. Where did Smith come from? But my question was going to be, as a Star Trek fan, I was like, okay, so the solution here will clearly be that Neo goes, hey, I actually built my own Matrix, which would have been foreshadowed by the little module that he built at the beginning, right? Yeah. And I trapped you, the analyst, inside it without you knowing by swapping my mind with your mind in the real Machine City. I was like, okay, here we go. This is how it's going to go down. That didn't happen. You're right. So Smith, like our new Smith, I was under the impression that appearance came from Neo's module, but you're right, because that's his boss. So, like, why would the machines actually, like, reinsert that code? Or are we just to assume that part of the one source code that is contained within Neo contains that the source code anomaly the anomalous source code for Agent Smith? But the first two sequels specifically dealt with that substrate question, right? Can a machine intelligence that only exists in the Matrix, like an agent, right, which has no real body in the real Machine City, what if that took over the body of a person that was jacked into the Matrix? And that happens. Smith takes over that guy's body, and then he, goes into the real world and fights Neo in the real world. And man, I gotta go watch the Matrix movies again after we're done talking about this, because that scene is great when it's like Neo's all blindfolded and there's the gun. Yeah, but that does raise that question of, where did he come from? Is it because there was leftover code in Neo, or was it because that machine existed somewhere in the Machine City? I don't have an answer to that question. Paul, do you have an answer to that?
No, because if we pass through what we saw in the original trilogy, Smith had entirely taken over everything that was in the Matrix at the end, and then he was purged by the Matrix because they were directly linked into Neo. And wibbly wobbly timey wimey, I actually don't know because they don't actually explain that bit.
Neo allowed himself to be copied over, thus canceling out the source code. Something like, if Smith is the opposite of Neo and then they merge, then -1 + 1 = 0, correct?
Something along those lines. And then the original Matrix used that, like, maybe because they were directly connected to Neo, who then had the code, they were able to use that to insert the antivirus, and then so on and so forth. So what is supposed to have happened at that point is that Smith has been purged from the original Matrix, and then they're going to, rebuild, remake, etc., etc. Now, what appears to happen in this film is Smith in the film originally as the boss isn't Agent Smith. It's when he picks up the gun that he turns into Agent Smith. So was there a single piece of that code like left over, having somehow survived? Because
Wow.
as Smith says in the original trilogy, like, he wants to get out, he wants to just kind of
Paul,
he wants to be. So
this
maybe
is totally on me. I don't know how I, as the host of Sudden But Inevitable, have missed this, but the answer is because Smith is inevitable. Anywhere Neo is, Smith will inevitably arise. That's the point he was trying to make to Neo. Like, he's the opposite of Neo. So if Neo is there, Smith will exist. So I think our answer is either Smith arises as as an emergent property of any Matrix system out of necessity, or he is part of Neo in such an intrinsic way that his mere insertion into one of those systems will eventually lead to the creation of a Smith.
Yeah, and it could also be like Neo is finally beginning to accept that he is Neo. Like, he doesn't take the pill and he doesn't fully grasp it, but he's beginning to think that way again, and that is when Smith arises. So,
and if the whole movie is about needing to accept both halves of a thing to be able to live as the non-binary one, I mean, that fits pretty well, right?
Yeah.
The pieces of Neo have always been Thomas Anderson, Trinity, and Agent Smith. So I think that's almost poetic, man. I think you figured it out better than I did when I watched through it.
Yeah, I'll take that as a win. Yeah, I found it, like, it was that thing that was niggling at me. Like, it wasn't something that broke the film at all for me.
Right.
Like, it was just something that I hadn't sat down and really worked through. But no, I do like that as an answer. Now, as I kind of said before as well, and I was interested because I was certain it would show up in this one, and it still didn't. So in the original Matrix, the character of Switch was supposed to be one gender in the real world and the other gender in the Matrix, which was why their name was Switch. But they didn't do that because the studio said, nope, we're not doing that. So
They just gave Switch an androgynous actor instead.
Yes. I mean, they may as well have cast Tilda Swinton. Like, they,
right?
Yeah, they got Tilda Swinton's younger sister to play it. But yeah, I was certain that was going to finally happen in this one. Now, it's absolutely possible that it did happen, and we just didn't know because it wasn't someone that was front and center in the film.
Yeah.
It could absolutely be the case, and it might be something that if you go back and look at it and really look at every single person and go through, you might find someone that does do that, and they just didn't, hang a lantern on it. Which, if that is the case, well done them, because that's a really cool way of doing that.
I would almost say they didn't need it this time because they had the opportunity in the first 10 minutes of the movie to say The Matrix is about trans politics. So it was like, you could not have done that in 1999. But in this movie, you can just say that in the beginning, and then you don't have to have a character who's shown to have a different self-image. I mean, all the characters in this movie have a different self-image than what is portrayed for part of the movie, right? So, it goes back to that substrate thing and how that's kind of a core thing in the Matrix is, the space you inhabit, the meat space you inhabit.
Yeah. And the most fascinating thing to me in this film was connected with how they dealt with the fact that so many people didn't come back. So there is a lot of flashback / straight up playing the original trilogy in this film at the front end. And there are, if we're going this route, there are technically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 people that were in the original trilogy that are in this film. Now, technically, let me think. How many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of them are playing the character that they were in the original trilogy, and one of them is not. So obviously you have Keanu Reeves as Neo and reprising the role, Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity, and then the biggest surprise for me, Jada Pinkett Smith.
Yeah.
Like that, I kind of appreciated that they just picked Niobe, and it was like, all right, yep, she's still here, she's back, she's running IO now. So yeah, I enjoyed that she was in it, and they actually had her in, I would argue, fairly good makeup in this one. Like I felt that it was, it wasn't as bad as you've seen in a lot of films where someone's like, let's slap some makeup, let's Back to the Future their faces. But no, I thought it was a reasonable 60-year makeup job in that, and I appreciated she was back. And then of course you had the Merovingian as that homeless dude,
as the
on
old
the
man
subway.
yelling at a cloud.
Yeah, so that was really just a fun surprise. Like, I think it would have been I highly doubt they would have been able to get Monica Bellucci back, but I think it would have been even more fun to have him as this this completely shabby hobo character, a fragment of his former self, and then have Monica Bellucci as she was in the original. She nothing's happened to her. She's still herself.
Persephone looks the same. She's in charge of the club now. Everything's fine.
Yeah, and I think that would have been funny, but still. But yeah, so technically there is one person who was in this film who was technically in the first film.
That would be
Now,
Neo's stunt double?
Yep.
Right? I can't remember the guy's name.
It's Chad Stahelski. So yeah, he was the stunt double for Neo in the original Matrix. He is also the director of all the John Wick films. So yeah, they had him in as Chad, as a literal Chad, as Trinity's husband. So he is once again, quite literally, the stand-in for Neo. Because he is Trinity's or Tiffany's husband. So I found that really funny. There's several layers going on there, having him in as that role. And actually, one thing that I didn't catch until my second watch of this film is, for absolutely no reason whatsoever, Christina Ricci is in this film.
What, really?
Yep.
What? Where? When?
She is the female executive that is sort of leading the talks on the Matrix sequel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Her name is apparently Gwyn DeFeer.
Wow. Okay.
So, yeah. No, it's it was like I didn't catch it on my first go through. I was watching the second one. I was like, who is that? And so I looked it up. It's Christina Ricci. I think I'm saying that last name right. I might not be. I don't care at this point.
She gets paid the big bucks. I'm sure she's all right with it either way.
Yeah, she'd already made her money out of this film. Whatever. But no, yeah, it's so random. The most random thing that apparently may or may not be in the film, and no one's been able to verify it, is that Tom Hardy actually filmed a background cameo for this film, but it may or may not be in the film.
Huh.
As far as I know, there's been no verification on where in the film it would have been and what's going on. So it's very, very odd. And then the only other thing of total oh, okay, of note is that the mayor of I can't remember. It's what I believe it's San Francisco.
Yes,
wherever it was. Yeah, the mayor of San Francisco is in the film for a second
because they needed the signature of that person, I believe, to do the stunt where they walk off the edge of that building. I think that was why they had to have that person was nearby, and they went, "Hey, sign this, and if you do, we'll let you be in the movie."
Yeah, like they gave her a thank you in the credits, and then they're also like, "Okay, you're going to be in the film." She is the one who is getting people to safety during the swarm mode at the end. So yeah,
good PR opportunity for that mayor. Well done, mayor.
Yeah. I mean, it worked for Arnold Schwarzenegger, so I will say I know we've been jumping around in this and talking about the people that are in this, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, I believe, he was very good as Morpheus 2.0.
Morpheus in air quotes.
Yeah, I found it really interesting that he plays the Morpheus that Neo programmed.
Yeah.
So like it's Morpheus as Morpheus probably saw himself.
Well, and but it's Morpheus mixed with Agent Smith because it's again, Neo needed all of the pieces around him to become the one, right? So he had to have a Morpheus and he had to have Smith, but he didn't really know how to communicate that to his module, so he just went, "Give me a Smithius and it will be fine." I'll be honest, I was going in like, come on, man, you got both of these guys, but you didn't get Lawrence Fishburne. What's going on? And then it became apparent to me that it was that substrate thing. It was part of the point to be like, oh, because that's not even what he actually looks like. Like there are so many layers of body image and self-image and, inhabiting different substrates in this movie that it sort of doesn't matter who we put in any of these roles. I bet you that Lana went, it doesn't matter who's in any of the roles, but I would really like to work with Keanu and Carrie Ann and these people again. And then other than that, we can hire whoever we want, and that will make the movie cost less, I think.
Yeah, probably. I do know that they did reach out to Hugo Weaving to play Smith again, and frustratingly, because obviously that would have been the perfect trinity to get back, he was tied up in filming other things, so he was unable to do it. It wasn't that he didn't want to, as far as we know. He was just like genuinely unable to make it. So that is why there is Smith who isn't Smith in this. I did appreciate that they had several cutting back and forth between the original and him. For Jonathan Groff is the name of the actor, and supposedly he wanted to portray the presence of Smith, but he didn't want to do a copy of Hugo Weaving. Yeah. So I thought he did well with that, because again, he's Smith, but he's not.
Right.
So.
And if you're put into that position, it's what are you to do, right? I think he went the best possible route, because for me now, I think the movie definitely benefits from people who really enjoyed the first trilogy when they watch it, because like a lot of goodwill built up in my body about the original trilogy, because every time he spoke, I was picturing Hugo Weaving's cadence and voice personally, and that made that character have more gravitas for me. Now, I'm not saying that that's a failure of this movie. I'm saying it worked for me because I was already used to going, oh, this is the same character in a new shell, because they did that with the Oracle in the first sequel, and I went, oh, okay, what a clever way to explain a real-life problem that they had with the passing of that actor. So, again, I think everything in this movie has been set up in universe to function in universe, and I appreciate that about it. And I think between the two new versions of characters we had seen with Smith and Morpheus, I think I liked the Morpheus portrayal better. But I think they also gave that character more to do, right? They gave that character more of their own arc and, more of a two halves of one whole sort of a storyline. So I think I like that one better, but that's probably by design.
Yeah, it was very interesting to me to see who they did and didn't get back. One thing that I found odd is that they didn't just get the grown-up Sati to come back and play Sati again. They just got, again, want to try and get it right, so it's Priyanka Chopra Jonas, who apparently was the winner of Miss World 2000. So there you go. But yeah, they got her to play the grown-up Sati, which, again, I found interesting because they obviously played around a lot with how programs do develop and grow, and they quite literally had this little girl program from the original is now in adult form in this one. So you know what, that's actually, I think, probably one of the last things we'll touch on for now, because I don't want to be keeping you and the audience for too long. It's something that I haven't heard too many people talking about, just in some of the things I've read and listened to so far. What were your thoughts on how they had the society where humans and machines, although they did not prefer to be called machines, what was the term? I'm blanking on it now.
They were like sentience, I think, or something.
Yeah, it's like sentience or something like that.
They had some kind of name. So I
Yeah,
actually really liked, in particular, the designs of the friendly machines. I liked that they were very organic, which again stems from the design of the original trilogy. All the machinery in the original trilogy was very organic and insectoid and creepy crawly. There was not too many hard lines. It was all very lithe and organic looking. And I really liked the peaceful looking designs on some of the friendly machines. I liked the the flowing nanobots look that Morpheus ended up with at when they were doing their assault on the Machine City. Yeah. The friendly, oversized robots gave me definite Dune 1984 vibes, I think, which I really appreciated. And there was the warm insectoid versions of the machines that we had seen. I really liked that, and I liked the concept of, well, hey, but the war is over, and Niobe going, yeah, that doesn't mean that everything's fine. It's still real life, dude. And that kind of, it hits you, and it's a good point to make right now in 2021. You'll be listening in 2022, but trust me, 2021 sucked. So it's a good point to make, just because there's maybe not a huge war happening doesn't mean everything is fine. There's still plenty of conflict and struggle going on, and you still need to be paying attention. So I liked that mix, and I liked that they gave us that society without having somebody in that society be the one to be like, oh, there's a sleeper agent in here that wants to kill all humans. I'm glad they didn't do that. One little nitpick I have, I don't know if I like changing the name from Zion to Io. I get it. It's a much more binary name. It's input, output. It's got the, on, off symbol connotations. So I fully understand why they did it. Me personally, I wouldn't have done that. But I do like the presentation of their society, because even in the original sequels, the humans and the machines were shown to be interdependent on each other, even if they weren't at war. Zion was built on machinery, right? The Machine City was powered by humans. So that interconnected nature of all beings and all life, I think, has been there from the start. So I was glad to see it persist through this movie.
Yeah, and another thing I was going to see if it came up in the film, and I'll jump back to my thoughts on it real quick as well, just from what you were saying. Obviously, in the original Matrix, it was supposed to be that humans were being used as processing units, because brains are infinitely more powerful than microchips as of this moment in time, in being able to process things. So that was the original way it was going to work. And then again, the studios jumped in and said, what about if they're batteries? Even though that makes no sense, because humans are ridiculously awful at outputting energy. But yeah, I thought they would somehow bring that back in, like the new Matrix was being run by the people connected to it and stuff like that. But they didn't do that. But no, yeah, I found it really interesting that they had the human sentient what again, I'm a little frustrated that I can't remember the term, but yeah, the good machines, and how they work that in, the fact that there were still the Sentinels and they were still the bad guys working for the new Matrix, but there is a sort of uneasy piece, like is that there is some sort of piece there. Now, one thing that didn't hit me until you were kind of mentioning the design of the machines, assuming that you have some familiarity with Mass Effect.
Very, very little.
Do you think that the people that designed the Reapers in Mass Effect did so because of the design of some of the machines in the Matrix, as well as obviously other drawings on things like that? Obviously, Cthulhu is probably a really big one, but
yeah. So I think, as a person with almost no familiarity with Mass Effect, I have seen direct comparisons drawn online on heard it on nerd podcasts, that kind of a thing. If you listen to those sorts of things, and that's actually a great point, that insectoid / tentacled form factor of those machines really fits that eldritch horror feel that you get if by realizing, oh, you live in a dream world. That's very Cthulhu, very Lovecraftian sort of philosophies going on, right? And then to see the organic machines, it feels like you could draw a direct design lineage from H.R. Is it Giger? I think it's Giger.
Geiger?
I've heard it pronounced Geiger, but I'm not German, so you could almost draw that direct design lineage down, right? The organic machine, the pulsating metal, the coiled steel sort of a thing, that warm machine that runs on organic matter. There's goo in this movie. There's goo in the Matrix, right? Like it's that melding of organic and machine that really provides that body horror / substrate / two parts of a whole. I mean, as you said before, Paul, there are so many levels in this freaking movie. Like, papers will be written, and papers were written about the original Matrix trilogy. So I'm sure there will be no shortage of analysis for this movie.
Yeah, I mean, I remember listening to all 4 of the commentary tracks that were available for the original Matrix when that came out, and I think 2 of them were theologians and physicists and so on, discussing the different things that came up from that film and how it changed their field, how some of the things that are in there were drawing off of that stuff and really going into all of those different things. So yeah, I do think that there will be options for that with this one. As well as, I mean, if they're really going to lean into it, they could even have a Deadpool commentary track for the first 30 minutes of this film, because it would be very fitting. Yeah, I mean, they're effectively doing all of the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Backs look directly to camera, for the entire opening act of this film, because it was very much hi, thanks for watching. Anyway, back to the film.
Yeah, and for me, it's one of the first instances, I think, where I've watched a movie, partway through it gone, oh, I don't think this movie is aimed at me, and then gone, I'm fine with that. Like, now that I understand that, I'm going to watch the rest of it anyway and see what I can get out of it. Because the first movie wasn't necessarily aimed at me either, right? It was aimed at as wide a possible audience so that they could get the movie made. And that's fair.
Yeah.
This, I think, is almost pure auteurism. Like, this is Lana's movie for Lana. And as a person who creates a thing, I'm not saying that I'm a Hollywood movie maker, but as a person who creates a thing, art will, at its base, always be partially and most probably primarily for the artist. And I think most artists would agree with that. It's an act of creation for ourselves. So for Lana to go, I'm going to make my Matrix how I want it, and I will tell people that that's why it is the way that it is, I think is admirable, and I've seen it referred to as IDGAF filmmaking at its finest.
Yeah, it's fairly accurate. Yeah, and, yeah. I've always said, whenever anyone else, like when it comes to this podcast, absolutely, the reason that I make this podcast is that I enjoy making it, and I enjoy having these conversations with people. And as soon as I no longer enjoy that conversation, this podcast will draw to a close. However, the fact that people are listening and engaging and so on, like it's awesome. And yes, thank you everyone out there that is doing so. But yeah, this film very much feels like Lana was just going like, okay, I'm diving back in with this one, and it's like, and then I'm done. Like, yeah, this, and especially like thinking back on it now, like understanding where she was coming from with this film, like why she jumped in, why she made it. Like, I can definitely see a lot of the opening of this and a lot of the ending of this being like trying to get over the grief of losing someone and bringing back someone from the past, but then working to move on. And I feel that is where they landed at the end. I think they did a good job with that, and I'm intrigued to see what happens next. I personally would get behind, say, a TV show or even an anime series. I mean, the Animatrix was phenomenal. More of that, please. But I think that at this point, and obviously people would have said this before with the previous one, but like at this point, I consider the film franchise to be done. Like, I do not think it will be possible to make another one. Especially not with the original team involved. And if the original team is not involved, I don't think it will. I don't think Keanu Reeves will do it, to be perfectly frank, if the Wachowskis are not connected. So I feel like he would just be like, thanks but no thanks. And without him and without Neo in it, I don't think it will have the draw. Depends on who gets attached, I guess.
It's also possible that in 20 years, Warner Brothers will say, all right, we're doing it with or without you anyway, man. So what do you want? And it wouldn't surprise me, but I hope that they get somebody who at least understands, what made it cool. I want to be asked a big question, and I want to see something I've never seen before visually, personally.
Yeah, like the only like new Matrix that I would be willing to accept is one from the point of view of the machines, like an entirely different take on it, an entirely different viewpoint, and like just it would be a way of furthering the world without necessarily changing anything, and just giving you more of an understanding overall of what's going on. But I don't see that happening. But here's hoping that down the line, if they do go that route, that's the way they go. Because I mean, like at this point, this film made fun of the idea of anyone coming in and saying we're going to make a sequel to The Matrix. Yeah. So, and did you see the end credits scene for this one?
I did. If I have a full-on complaint for the movie, it would be that. But
it would be that, yeah.
I also get it.
Yeah, and yeah, for people that haven't seen it, it is a jump back to the brainstorming session for what the next Matrix will be, and based on everything I've read, and based on my interpretation of it, this is Lana Wachowski's final middle finger to the concept of another sequel. Yep. Because it is just the idea of cat video Matrix, the Catrix. Like, it's like, okay, like, you're just fucking around at this point.
Well, and she's not far off the mark. Like, yes, that's not. This scene is literally in this movie, so that makes it a possibility. Like, that's I appreciated the commentary, but still, the scene was like, I personally didn't need that.
Yeah, and obviously that's another thing. Like, I can understand why it is an end credit sting. Like, anyone that liked the film and left, they didn't miss out on that. Like, I knew there was an end credit thing, so I skipped the credits and just went straight to it. So I didn't sit around waiting for it. So I didn't feel like I had sat for nothing. So I was okay with it. And I genuinely saw it as, like, I think Lana just woke up one day and was like, okay, yeah, that's going. We're filming this tomorrow. It's going at the end of the film, and chances are the executives aren't going to see this bit, so we'll be fine. Like, I appreciated it for what it was, and I'm glad it wasn't in the film proper, as it were. I think that would have been just a bit much if it were in there, but yeah, I will say at the end of all this, like, again, I could see where people are coming from when they are having some issues with it. I do know some people really struggled with the tone shift, and some people had issues with, like, how they brought the character back or what they then had the characters do. But I personally really enjoyed it just from a, like, number one, nostalgia. It was more Matrix, and it had Neo and it had Trinity in it, and whenever they were on screen, it was good. Like, I enjoyed seeing what Lana's take on this was, and I am a huge fan of meta done right, and I feel this film did it right. If they had at any point had a character turn to camera and wink, that would have been too much.
But they did stop just short of that.
Yeah, they were just shy of it, and did it very well. And then after the first half hour, they effectively, not completely, but effectively just cut that off and then moved on with the story. So, like, it stayed around for about the right amount of time, and then they moved on, and then had one or two little bits here and there, but otherwise we're good. And I really enjoyed this. I'm glad that they went away with it that I wasn't expecting. As I did mention, as we were talking, there are several things I was like, oh, would have been nice to see this. But given why it was made, how Lana was able to take it and make it her own, like, I fully accept it for what it is, and I feel that it's going to be a film that I would argue this film probably sits at second best overall, in my view, when it comes to the rankings of the film. Like, just above Reloaded, in my... Like, not much above it, but just above it. So, for anyone that wants my particular rankings on the Matrix trilogy now, Matrix quadrilogy, so it would be The Matrix Resurrections, Reloaded, Revolutions. So that's how I would rank it, and obviously that means I would recommend this film to anyone that hasn't seen it and has been listening this far. I mean, well done.
Especially if you don't want to watch it.
Yeah. I mean, like, well done you if you decided to just listen to us talk about it rather than watch the film. But yeah, so that's my take on it. How about you?
I personally, I can't, Paul. I'm sorry. It's the Matrix, and then it's the Matrix Reloaded, because the Matrix Reloaded showed me 100 Agent Smiths fighting Neo. It showed me Neo flying in a convincing enough way. It had that showdown in the chateau. It had the crash on the semi trucks. It had the highway chase. There's so much fun in the Matrix Reloaded, and I go based on how much fun I had. Even for my cerebral movies, I think. So I have to go The Matrix, Matrix Reloaded, then I would definitely go Resurrections, and then I would go Revolutions. But I also think that Reloaded and Revolutions is just one long movie, so you have to kind of rank them together. I would still put this, I would still watch this as part of a rewatch of the series. I wouldn't go, I'm going to skip that. But I, if somebody was like, I only have the first three, do you want to watch them? I'd be like, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing, like, again, this film is very standalone in what it does, and I fully appreciate that. And I should feel that I should make clear, like, there are many things from Reloaded that I was completely on board for. Specifically, the one thing that I was incredibly annoyed they didn't bring back was the virus twins, because they weren't dead.
They're ghosts. They can't be killed by fire.
Yeah, I mean, like they went intangible as that explosion went off, so they're clearly alive. They just never brought them back. But yes, I was annoyed they didn't come back. But yeah, I feel that if you're just looking at it as a standalone film, I feel this film was better than Reloaded. However, Reloaded was more fun. I will agree with you there. So yeah, that's why I was saying this film is just above it as a standalone film. But yeah, I think we should probably leave it there, even though there's definitely more we could talk about. I think I covered sort of the main things I wanted to touch on, including one or two things that I haven't heard too much about myself. So yes. But yes, thank you very much for coming on and talking with us about me. Great to have you on. So why don't you tell people where they can find you and the sort of things that you'll be doing roughly about the time this thing comes out?
Absolutely. Thank you. First of all, I have to say thank you, Paul, for having me. I have had a lot of fun talking about the Matrix Resurrections with you, and I'm sure that we'll be able to find something else that we have common ground on in the future to talk about. I, of course, as Paul has mentioned, am the host of a podcast called Sudden But Inevitable. If you don't recognize that phrasing, it comes from a little TV show called Firefly, which is, of course, maybe the most famous space western ever. The impetus for my show is that I had a friend who was watching The Mandalorian with me, and he was going, isn't this cool? And I went, yeah, but it's pretty much Firefly with a new coat of paint on it. And he went, well, I've never seen Firefly. So I started a podcast, made him watch Firefly, and then subsequently the movie Serenity. And when that was over, I thought, okay, I've got him into space westerns. What else can I get him into? Oh, anime. So I made him watch the original Cowboy Bebop, and now he's a fan of that. After that, we started to cover some other sci-fi movies until we get to our third season, which will be starting basically the same time this episode comes out, in which we will be covering the live-action Cowboy Bebop. Very divisive series. It has already been canceled. That is why we figured it would be perfect for us to cover. We do single-season space western shows kind of, by design. So we're covering Cowboy Bebop now, and we would love it if you would check out Sudden But Inevitable on your favorite podcast player. If you want, you can get a hold of me directly on Twitter at SuddenBut. That's 1 T. You can find me on Instagram at Sudden But Inevitable Podcast, or you can send me an email at jbaileypod@gmail.com. I think the easiest way to find me, though, is to just Google Sudden But Inevitable. We will pop up, and if you like Firefly or Cowboy Bebop or Highlander or Space Sweepers or Slither or Donnie Darko, these are some of the properties that we cover. We're a sci-fi rewatch podcast. Come check us out. Once again, thank you so much. I've had a lot of fun, Paul, and this is not kind of how I thought my Thursday night would go, so I'm very grateful for having been able to spend some time with you. Thank you.
Oh, no problem at all. And definitely I'm going to have you back, and I'll have to squeeze myself onto one of your podcast episodes at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
Yes, once again, just to rehash as well, so if you want to get a hold of me about anything from any of these episodes, just search BlokeBusters, you'll find it. Make sure that you tick that box that says, no, I didn't mean BlokeBusters, I meant BlokeBusters. Yeah, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Twitter, I will admit, most active on. Instagram and Facebook less so. You can email us, theblokes@blokebusters.com. You can go to blokebusters.com. You can go to allportsopen.com. Check out all the things that I just mentioned and more. We do have a Patreon. If anyone does wish to help out at all, even just $1 a month will help keep the lights on. It would be very much appreciated. And if more people do decide to jump on, maybe I'll shove more stuff on there. But as of right now, it is a very bare bone thing, I fully admit. But here's hoping. But yes, one last time, thank you very much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have you again soon. But until then, with all of that being said, I've been Paul.
And I have been Jesse from Sudden But Inevitable.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
In case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Hang on a minute, lads. I've got a great idea.
Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.